I heard some GameStop stores are now carrying retro games in their stores. So let's go ahead and go to two of them in my area that have them supposedly. First off, you walk in the door, you're hit right away with Xbox One and Xbox Series X games, as well as this little section here that has a bunch of consoles in it, but no retro games yet. So I kind of kept looking around. I made it to the controller section. I even found an Xbox toaster, which was interesting. Then I moved to the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5 section, where I kind of got distracted by PS5 games. But then I ended up actually carrying on, where I got to the Switch section, which, you know, I'm always looking for Switch games. So, I mean, I had to stop here and look. But then I kept going, where I ended up getting to the little case here on the left that actually ended up having retro games as well as Switch games, which kind of caught me by surprise. They had some Wiis, they had 3DSs, Wii U's, a Super Nintendo Classic, even a few retro games here. You got the Wii game in the back and then Nintendo 64 games up front, kind of. There were two 64 games and they were like normally priced. Then I ended up finding an NES controller for $15 as well as some Wii accessories. Right next to that, I spotted Star Wars Battlefront 2 for $8 on the original Xbox, which is a great deal considering this was complete, as well as Star Wars Republic Commando for $8. Both solid deals. If I didn't have the games already, I would have picked them up. Right below that was a bunch of Xbox 360 games that I checked out, but didn't find anything that I had to have. And then PS3 games, but I didn't find any PS2 games, which was kind of a bummer. And right next to that, you've got the Wii U, Wii, you got GameCube games, which was interesting. I was checking the prices. $10 for Mario Kart 8 is not a bad deal on the Wii U, as well as $10 for Super Mario 3D World. I was kind of shocked that these prices were decent. Then I ended up finding a few Wii games here up above that I thought about but I didn't get. But Paper Mario Thousand Year Door for $55. If I didn't have this in my collection for the GameCube, I probably would have picked it up. And I probably should have. It's worth like 60, 65 to 70 complete, like the condition that it was. So I almost should have picked it up, but they did have 3DS games as well. But some of the prices, like $70 for Mario Party 9, was just outrageously overpriced. I don't know where they're getting some of these prices, but they did have retro games, so I'm not too disappointed. Mortal Kombat on the Xbox 360, a ton of fun. I love that it's already in my collection. Same with Gears of War. For $8, not too bad. You got a Guitar Hero game for $20, a little expensive, but that's probably a decent GameStop price. Red Dead Redemption for cheap here. They had actually some pretty good games that I was definitely interested in, but then I got out of there and headed to this other GameStop. Obviously, as you can tell, it was starting to get dark by now and was actually raining a little bit. But that did not stop me from going into this GameStop. I checked out the PlayStation section. Didn't really find anything, so I kept going, where I ended up finding an Xbox Duke controller for $15, which was kind of interesting. I did ended up checking out the controllers again over by the PlayStation to see if there was like a PS3 or a PS2 controller. I didn't find any of those. I also checked this case again. No consoles or anything like that were retro. So I headed over to the Xbox section, and again, there wasn't anything else retro here other than those maybe Xbox One consoles, if you want to count those. So I continued on, kind of just looking at the games. My wife did end up looking through here, and she actually ended up wanting to get Red Dead Redemption 2. Brand new for $20. Seems like not a bad deal. So I headed over to the Switch section in hopes that maybe this case would have more retro games, but unfortunately there wasn't anything there, so I headed back to where the other section had it, and lo and behold, they actually had a bunch of retro games here, more than the other one. Actually, surprisingly, they had some Wii U games here. They had Wii games like Skyward Sword for $28, which is not actually a terrible deal. And as you can see, I knocked some games off Unfortunately, they should have had an end cap here, but whatever. Paper Mario for the Wii as well for 30 bucks. Okay, and then I saw Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2 for the GameCube for only 35 bucks, which is definitely an awesome game. I've been picking up GameCube games all summer long, and you know I'm going to grab this one as well. They also had this Naruto game that caught my eye, but I didn't end up ultimately getting it. The PS3 section was pretty decent. They had games like Skate 3, which I absolutely love. Then they even had a bunch more here. I was kind of trying to move them over so I could actually grab some out. Some Silent Hill games that I thought about getting, but then when I looked at the prices, these were like 8 to 10 bucks too expensive, so I left those behind. I don't see those too often in my area. Another Guitar Hero game here. But honestly, it was a really pretty small section. I headed over to the Xbox 360 game section, and again, this was a little bit smaller than the other GameStop store, which kind of surprised me a little bit. World Tour for Guitar Hero, again, just a few games here and there. Then I realized that these were actually Super Nintendo games, but I don't know why they weren't in the case. I thought that was kind of weird, but I ended up grabbing these two games and walking out of GameStop. So overall, GameStop does have retro games, but it seems like they're still rolling it out, at least in my area. I've seen a ton of other people find some pretty cool stuff, but I honestly didn't find too much crazy stuff. You did see me pick up this Xbox One game. We had this, but for whatever reason, when I originally bought it, it was all scratched up because I bought it used, and the disc didn't work that well, so for 20 bucks, my wife wanted to pick it up again and play it some more. But the best deal that I found was this GameCube game. Honestly, Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2 looks like a ton of fun. I've never actually played this game, so for 35 bucks, you knew I had to have it when I saw it. I've been picking up GameCube games all summer long, so adding this to the GameCube collection was a no-brainer, but this game's worth around $48 complete like this one is, so I'm pretty happy and shocked that I found a good deal at GameStop. Normally when I go to GameStop or game stores like this, I figure I'm paying price charting or maybe like 10 to 15% more, but this was actually lower than it, so I was shocked and happy about that. But it did get me thinking that maybe GameStop is pricing all their games on loose disc prices, because normally if you would have bought this online, you probably would have just gotten the disc unless you were super lucky. So I think that does kind of factor into this. If you have a GameStop that has retro games in your area and they have disc-based games, you might want to go in and check the prices to see if maybe they missed something, because they definitely missed this. And when I went to buy it, they couldn't find the game because it was the only GameStop or GameCube game in GameStop, and they had to dig for a while, and they almost didn't want to sell it to me because they couldn't find it. And I said, I'm fine, I'm waiting. There's no one else in the store, so if you could, I'd like to actually be able to buy it. And they did thankfully be able to find it, but it took a little bit. So GameStop having retro games is kind of interesting to me. I think it's something I like to see. Hopefully it revives GameStop and they do good things with it and kind of veer away from the path of doing what they've been doing, which is just tanking the stores. So I like to see this. I would definitely like to see more stock though. There was like barely any retro games. It was literally like maybe 4 feet wide, whereas the other new game systems were like 20 feet on each side. So I want to see more GameCube and more retro games for sure, but I actually thought it was actually pretty decent. Some of the prices were insane. Some of them were right on, and there were a few that were under, like that Paper Mario 1,000 Year Door. I realistically thought after I left, I probably should have picked it up, but I didn't, so whatever, it's okay. But I'm getting out of here, so check that video out if you haven't already. And if you have got a GameStop near you that's selling retro games, comment down below and let me know what you think about it. I think this is kind of a cool thing to see because it's more retro games in places that usually don't sell them, but we'll see how they price things in the future, because that's where I think it could get a little rough. But I'm getting out of here, so check out that video out if you haven't already.